Welcome back to Telecom's World Asia 2021. Our next panel, starting now, is on protecting your network from growing cybersecurity threats. Introducing the moderator for this panel, Richard Marshall, who is the chairman of Cinturion. Please don't forget, if you have any questions for our panel today, you can use the live Q&A box next to the presentation window. What I'll do now is I will ask our panelists to turn their cameras on and hand it over to Richard to introduce everyone and to get us started. Over to you, Richard.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This is a very exciting panel discussion that we have lined up today. I'm looking forward to the brilliance that all of these stars are going to share. And of course, this is of particular concern to all of us in the cybersecurity industry, particularly those that are dealing with transmission services. So if you don't mind, I would like one of our speakers to introduce himself and tell us a bit about what he does and what keeps him awake at night. Why is he worried?
Richard, just for you, we can't see your face.
Well, I've got the camera on. I'm trying to.
Yeah, just move your maybe phone down a little bit. We can see half of your face. Now it's better now.
Okay, I couldn't see anything, so that's why all right.
I moved down a little bit.
How's that?
Yes, that's better. Yes, that's good.
Right. Okay, I'll hold it that way then. All right, who wants to be first to introduce themselves and tell them what keeps them awake at night?
Maybe I first start first. My name is Benny. I am the market development department of HGC International Business, and with international business, HGC actually is one of the telecom operator in Hong Kong, and we have a international business arm across 22 countries to provide internet IP transit services. So I am in that division. We have what my responsibility is to help my colleagues to actually help customer with faster internet access and also ICT solution. Thank you.
Wow, what worried you most about providing that service?
You mean the location?
No. Do hackers bother you? Are you worried about ransomware? Are you worried about nation-state activity?
Most of it are the ransomware and phishing attack.
Okay. Is there any particular area of the country or the world that you're concerned about? That poses the best threat to you?
I don't see. I think the threat actually across over the world, because phishing attack is very simple and very easy to conduct. So when we talk to our customer, we will always want them to have the awareness. So we always provide some kind of awareness training to them, and it's quite popular for the Southeast Asia country.
Oh, that's excellent. That is great. All right, who's next?
I'm going to take it from here. Good afternoon. My name is Bechara. I'm leading the cybersecurity business of Telefonica within Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific. Basically, my job is to help telcos because, as we always say, we have the right to play as telcos to provide cybersecurity service. So we enable, we help, we prepare telcos to deliver cybersecurity services within their territories. I've been there for 2 years. I'm a cybersecurity specialist, and here we are. What makes me awake during the night is the same that makes everyone awake during the day. Threats are all over, and definitely supporting customers to get into safer world, basically, or a safer environment, because at the end, no one is 100% secure.
Excellent. So just help me understand exactly what you do to help your customers. Do you provide awareness training primarily as a service, or is that an additional complement to your portfolio?
Sure, thank you. No, basically, we have a 360 degrees portfolio. Some of the services has been built by Telefonica. So what we do is basically we deliver, we help some of the services which are white labeled. We deliver them through the partner to the customer, and others is just by helping it find the best partner.
All right. Now, in doing that, have you found resistance from CEOs or resistance from the leaders of particular customer sets that you're trying to help, not wanting to spend the money to help protect their systems?
That's the issue that we face every single day. I believe telcos usually they are very concerned about. I think the challenge is or the resistance from the CEO is that he wants to invest 10K today and generate 1 million tomorrow, which
Yeah.
usually in the traditional business that's how it works. But in cybersecurity, you need to nurture, you need to educate, you need to train, as Benny was saying. You need to prepare phishing and so on. You need to train. It's a journey that we need to work in telco in order to provide. That's, I believe, the resistance that we face at some point.
That's an excellent answer. That's great. All right, who's next? I'm sure there's more than three of us on.
Yes, definitely. I'd probably go next. Good afternoon, everyone. My pleasure being part of this roundtable discussion. My name is Abubakar, and I am the cybersecurity director for Batelco, that's Bahrain Telecom. And as part of my previous role, I was the cybersecurity advisor to the Telecom Regulatory Authority. And before that, I was a security consultant with Singapore Telecom. Now, my role includes cybersecurity governance, building and operating secure architectures, and defending with our CERT operations against cyber attacks. To the question as to what keeps me awake in the night, apart from my 4-year-old, I think it's about trying our best to keep the lights on. You know, we're part of a critical telecom infrastructure, and while ransomware and phishing attacks and large-scale DDoS disruptions are definitely threats that we're worried about, ultimately it's all about making sure that this critical telecom service is available to our customers and are able to help customers connect internally within the country and to the outside world as well.
Oh, interesting. Well, you do have a challenging job. I guess you don't have to worry about somebody trying to replace you, given all of your host of responsibilities. That's impressive. Next, please.
All right. Afternoon. My name is Binh. I'm from Vietnam. I'm currently CEO of a medium-sized ISP named NetNam, 27 years old. ISP in Vietnam, and we are providing basically internet access for corporate customers. And recently we put more add-on or value-added services for our clients, including some security services such as DDoS mitigation or like cybersecurity monitoring. And in Vietnam, there are a lot of challenges related to cyber security, and the market is on the development during the last 2 or 3 years, and many challenges and threats about DDoS, about phishing, about APT, and I think one of the weakness for Vietnamese organization and corporation is awareness about cybersecurity. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. All right, who's next?
I guess I'm the last. Hi, my name is Donny. I'm from Nexusguard. So we are a company that provides managed DDoS protection platform and services for telcos and CSPs. So particularly, we enable telcos, ISPs, and companies in the CSP space to be able to offer managed security services offering to their customers. So at Nexusguard, my role is predominantly heading the product department. Okay, so I speak to telcos and CSPs, and I design and build solutions catered for the individual CSPs themselves. What keeps me awake at night is incidentally what gives me my job. So DDoS attacks happens around the clock. So our customers are reaching out to us around the clock. So in the DDoS space, there's no rest. So, speaking to customers and helping them solve their problems and solutions and providing our solutions around the clock. So yeah, so I think with DDoS becoming mainstream, and I'm sure, in the space of DDoS, we have now been seeing a lot of these attacks that are breaking terabit line. We see multi-terabit attacks. I think within the past 2 weeks, we've seen 2 or 3 now. So I think this is going to be one of the mainstream trends, and I think this is going to be on every telcos and ISP's radar, because this is going to be a problem for most of the telcos around the world.
Now, I agree with you, and I think everyone on the panel would as well. Quite often, hackers, whether they're hackers for hire or whether they're state-sponsored, for example, use a DDoS attack as a distracting tactic. They'll overwhelm you with a DDoS attack, and then they use that to distract you so that they can then penetrate your system and try to steal your data. Let me ask a very broad question of each of you, and just answer it as you feel comfortable. Who should be responsible in your country for protecting data security? Should the government play a bigger role? Or is it one limited to the private sector? Or is it best served as a combination of the government working with the private sector?
If you don't mind, I just share a few sentences only. I think.
Oh, I'm sorry, I overlooked you. Please. Go ahead.
I think it's as a combination. I think the responsibility especially is on the people, everyone. Because now the attack mostly come from the DDoS attack mostly come from those zombie machine. Okay, zombie laptop, maybe from my son's laptop, maybe from my mother's-in-law laptop, because so easy to infect it and then become a zombie machine to drive the attack throughout the world. So I think is everyone responsibility from my point of view, is because the origin of the attack can come from a zombie machine, which people does not aware. But if you take aware regarding to cybersecurity, that will help to minimize the attack all over the world. This is my comment.
Ah, that's excellent. Anyone else want to offer an observation?
I do agree with Benny. I believe it comes from people, no doubt, because that's what we are trying to do. I think for the last 5-6 years, saying about awareness and the importance of awareness within the community. As well, I believe it's a mix of the biggest part should be from the government, because at the end, the business side, we rely on data. As has been mentioned a couple of years ago, data is the new oil. So everyone wants to capture as much as possible. So when it comes to data security and protecting the data, I believe government should play a bigger role in making it fair for everyone and protecting the information that is critical and becoming more critical for every single end user.
Interesting. Any other comment?
So I'm from Singapore. So actually, I'm proud to say that as part of Singaporean, I think we have a very strong infrastructure. So this is related to data security anyway. So anything that we do, getting a loan, applying a credit card, going to the doctors, all our data are actually housed inside this Singapore repository governed by this app called SingPass. So every bit of our life, okay, is actually centrally housed at the government sector. So you do every single thing is via this single application. So it's very convenient. So paying a fine, applying for a bank loan, applying for a credit card, what happens is that application will actually fetch all the data from the government repository. So I think in this case, depending on where you come from, in Singapore's case, I think the government plays a big responsibility. And over the past few years, we've seen a lot of data leakage from the health services. Our Prime Minister's data was leaked. I think this was a world news, things that it was a joke, I guess. But I think it depends. But of course, there are going to be other developing countries where they might not have this infrastructure, and that predominantly resides on the individual. So I think it is largely dependent on at which stage of the digitalization where the country or the region is at. That's my take.
Oh, interesting. Any other comments, observations?
Getting some, all right. getting some share of information from Vietnam. We are in the position of developing, including policies and awareness, and also infrastructure, as some of you mentioned. During the COVID pandemic, last 2 months, we've got some issues or even problems on data, and the system were collecting data from citizens, and it was not really secure in the architecture and operation. So there are some kind of breachings, and in that meaning, it's the responsibility of the government, and for the organization, companies, corporation, it could be very important on awareness of the leaders of organization, and for the people, it's here. It's quite far from thinking of privacy or data protection. It's still, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I really like the responses that we're getting to this question. Not everyone agrees with each other specifically, but in general, we do seem to agree that there needs to be a combination of government and private sector activity to help protect our systems. Let me ask the question in a slightly different way, and I'm going to draw on my mother's personal experience with the computer system. Now, my mother is deceased now, God rest her soul, but at the time, she relied on her internet service provider to help make sure that any traffic coming into her system was not hostile. And toward that end, the internet service provider provided her with some software that would help protect her from viruses. And she thought that was just wonderful. But the difficult part was she didn't really know how to use that virus detection system. She didn't keep it active. So I had to visit her every so often and update her system to make sure it stayed clean. And when I discussed this with the internet service provider, they said, well, you know, it's the responsibility of the user, not the responsibility of the provider. And that got me to thinking that maybe there should be more responsibility on the part of the provider. And what I mean by that is, if I have a very sensitive system, say I'm a business, I'm willing to pay my internet service provider additional money to filter out bad traffic. Is that something we should look at or not? And I know, you know, basically, I'm asking you guys because you're internet service providers by and large.
I think
Yeah,
Donny
yeah.
can have a lot of questions because he's selling those things.
Okay. No, that's fine. That's fine. We need a combination of views and how to work this best. So, any comments, observations?
From our case, my case in Vietnam, we put like bundle services or like add-on services for corporate customers. So if they have awareness and they ready to pay more, we provide like cybersecurity monitoring alert and informing them about the threats and supporting them for making the system more secure. Or we put like add-on about DDoS services for corporate customers.
Okay, now what I'm basically hearing from everyone from the very beginning to now is that the onus, the one who's responsible for making sure that their system is protected, is the user. And it's the function of the ISP to help educate the user so that the user can make sure their system stays clean. Is that a fair assessment?
I would say so. At the end, definitely we will help from the ISP side. We will do our best to do it, but as we know, at the end, the cybersecurity business has or requires some cost. And knowing that the business in the IT world or the ISP side isn't doing much or isn't having a lot of margins and so on to be providing things for free for the user, I believe this is forcing us to provide to the end user the add-ons, the capabilities in a very simple way. But at the end, the one that should take action is the one using the laptop, is the end user.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I just have an idea. I just not come to my mind is for ISP to provide a user, because a laptop includes a lot of application, right? And a lot of application that the virus software will have to a lot of capability to detect. If, for example, we will definitely going to provide security service for like a clean pipe, if you may have heard of it, is the internet clean pipe, everything run through the washing machine and clean it up, make sure it's fine before we pass on to the corporate customer. Okay, this is one thing. But for like a normal person, we may think of it, it's like a Netflix set-top box. For a Netflix set-top box, it do nothing but streaming the video, right? So maybe that can be applied for a very hardened security because it's a dedicated application. But if you talk about a PC, a laptop, it involves too many things. Even the top antivirus software or top phishing software cannot guarantee 100% to be protected, which means that even the telco or us will always try to educate the user, because the behavior of each application are very different. I will put it that way. I would think that if we think that way, would be a fair statement. But if you're talking about dedicated system, like I play Xbox security, if anything hacked on the Xbox, it's Microsoft issue, right? So because we can't change any configuration on the Xbox, then I will say for that one, the vendor is the take most of the responsibility. Yeah, that's my comment.
Ah, good points. Next, yes.
If I may, so as a provider of these services, as we enable our partners to do this service, one of the main confusion that usually happens at the end user side is cybersecurity. I'm sure everyone would agree is actually a very wide, it's actually a very large area. It's very broad. So in terms of security, we have network security, we have border security, we have endpoint, we have data privacy, we have viruses and stuff like that, ransomware. So there's a multitude of attack vectors out there. And I think the complex answer is each and every of these segments requires a different approach to it. So to answer Richard's question, in my opinion, different depending on what kind of security you're talking about. Okay, the implementation could be different, the responsibility and the ownership could be different. So from a network attack perspective, with the ISP becoming the bottleneck or the provider of these network connectivity services, I think they play a bigger part. When it comes to individual like endpoint security, they have to provide the tools, but ultimately it's the end user that's providing these services. But I think from since everybody of us is here is in a service provider space, I think one of the key challenges is how we actually build up the portfolio of these services and be able to put it into the correct buckets, and then to be able to understand and then teach the sales team and the pre-sales team and eventually our customers these services, which of these services fall into which category. So for example, Benny talked about clean pipe services. In fact, with clean pipe services, there's also a different understanding of what clean pipe is. My experience has been in the European space, clean pipe could be just about free from viruses, where in the Asia space, clean pipe could be about DDoS protection. So even terms like this are very different from one region to another region. So I think there's a lot of things to clear up just to make sure that we ourselves we understand what we are selling before the customers will understand what they are receiving.
All right. This is turning into be a very informative and lively discussion. I'm enjoying this. I hope you are as well. Let me shift focus just a little bit. One of you commented on the fact that COVID has really changed the landscape for all of us. And I certainly would agree with that. When you are trying to protect a system that is owned by a company, and there's a limited number of users on that particular system, it's even though it's a challenge to protect it, it's much easier to protect it when you know who's going to be on it, when they're going to be on it. They have limited privileges, they're controlled, and you have the appropriate software to help protect that company's system. Now, it becomes more of a challenge, as you've alluded to, when you're operating in a stay-at-home, work-from-home environment, because then you're not just protecting a company's system, you're trying to help educate all of the users on a home-based system, whether they're the children, whether they're the non-working spouse, or whether they're the working spouse. How do you address those issues, or how have you had to confront them?
Right. Yeah, it's actually an extremely interesting question, because COVID has really transformed a number of things, right? I mean, people who are extremely comfortable working from an office space are now more comfortable working from their home space and have mobility to connect to corporate assets, right? And the thing about working from home is that earlier you were sharing your digital space with the LAN infrastructure where you'd have your fellow colleagues, and they're protected by a robust corporate security apparatus. Working from home means you're basically sharing your digital space with, as you said, your children and your spouse, and you have to be extremely careful of what connects to your network at home. And in order to protect that against that, it's just about creating a zero trust architecture and trying to move trust more closer to identity as creating the secure perimeter. And you also talked about the need to protect even children, because another trend that has come about is with universities and schools requiring children to have access to tablets and digital devices as their mean of connecting with school resources. And what that does is it increases the requirement of being able to protect children, because then they are much more likely to be drawn into malicious websites, and data related to children, etc., is something that is becoming a fast-growing threat it's becoming a fast-growing threat world over. And therefore, I think COVID has increased the threat landscape. It also has required telecom operators as well as security companies to offer solutions to suit this new paradigm and this new landscape of digital infrastructure.
My gosh, you really covered the waterfront with that answer. That's impressive. Thank you. Wow. All right, let me modify the question even slightly a bit more. And I'm not going to pick on any particular software developer in Washington State by the name of Microsoft. I'm just going to use that as a stalking horse. One of the frustrations I have had professionally, and I'm sure you gentlemen have experienced it as well, is the fact that the software developers generally use us as beta testers. They publish the software, we buy it, we lease it, as a matter of fact, or rent it as is. We don't have any recourse if it's not worthwhile. You know, the shrink wrap protection, which is fine for a new industry, but I think the software industry is much more mature now, and they should be held accountable for their software development. So, not picking on any particular software company, what can be done to help make sure they produce bug-free software? I'm waiting for an answer.
I'm just going to jump in from and
I realize this is a sensitive topic, but that's okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
Your question is how do we produce a bug-free software? I guess if I were to throw my CTO here, his question was that would never be possible. So there will be never a case where it's bug-free. It's whether the bug is whether it's a high impact bug, or is it vulnerable, how vulnerable it is and how dangerous it is. So I guess I think the point is, I think you raise a valid point, right? We are the free beta testers for software companies. We report bugs, we're not paid for any bug bounty program and stuff like that. But I think my simple answer is it's not going to be possible to be expecting programs out there to be bug free. But I think there should be a responsibility on the company that releases this to own this piece of this puzzle, that they should be responsible and make the best effort possible to make sure that all bugs are reported as well as covered. And then there should be a relevant bug bounty program, okay, for obviously for products that is being used at critical levels, critical state infrastructure levels. Yeah,
it's a tough question. Yeah. So
yes,
just put some comment from Vietnamese case. Recently, the National Security Center for Vietnam released a software about protecting protecting the mobile phones or the child from accessing the malicious sites, something like that. And they choose to open the source code and put it in GitHub for other people to look in. So other experts all over the world can see that and check if it's having a bug or something like that. So it could be an option, like if possible, so open the source code.
That's a very valid point, and there is a open source code movement that's taken place, oh gosh, in the last 15 years, maybe 20 years, from my experience, that has helped produce more robust software, I should say. But then when you have the large software development firms, they want to protect their proprietary data, their intellectual property, and that's why they're very reluctant to share their source code. But I also find it interesting that these large software developers are willing to pay a bounty for an independent hacker who discovers a vulnerability. And my experience, and that's shared by other practitioners, is that the software developer doesn't necessarily spend the resources to correct that deficiency. We talk about Patch Tuesday, which is followed by Vulnerability Exploit Wednesday, because the bad guys get the patch notifications as well. And when a developer, I just don't think it's a good business practice for a developer to know that there is a vulnerability and not spend the resources to correct it. And I'm sure all of you gentlemen have an opinion on that. Don't be shy, guys.
Yes, I think see, trust in software and building it secure by design, I think, is such an important aspect because while we continue to talk about zero trust architectures and making sure that we trust but we verify first, we have to realize that with cloud and with software development, we're basically creating an infrastructure where there are a lot of supply chain risks. Right. And if we're heavily reliant on third-party software, like we all are, I think the vulnerabilities that come about in these software, not just Microsoft-based products, but so many others, it has a wide-ranging impact. Just as an example, SolarWinds vulnerability earlier this year, and that exploitation impacted 20,000 organizations all at once, including some of the most leading organizations in the world. Right. And that's why while it's all good to develop robust and resilient architectures, but also it's important to be aware that we are inherently reliant on these pieces of software and infrastructure that are ultimately provided by a third party, and any vulnerability at their end and exploitation of that vulnerability has a wide-ranging impact as well. So as organizations, yes, we should encourage the culture and push and motivate the third-party suppliers to achieve a certain degree of trust within their systems. But as Donny has rightly noted, it's virtually impossible to think that we would ever have a piece of software code that will be completely vulnerability free. And it's largely about how do you minimize the attack surface of these vulnerabilities and exploitation of these vulnerabilities, and to try and mitigate risk through effective risk mitigation strategies.
Oh, brilliant. I totally agree with that. But one of the difficulties in patching, two difficulties basically come to mind. One is that both the private sector and the public sector is very reluctant to take the time to do the patching, because it does distract the CISO from their normal day-to-day duties to make sure all the patching is done, which seems counterintuitive. But for the banking industry, for example, where they run a lot of highly specialized software, they want to evaluate the software patch offered by Microsoft, for example, to make sure it won't have an adverse impact or interfere with the operating system that has very specialized software on it. So you're right. It is one major challenge, and one that's very difficult to address.
Yeah.
But if you can come up with an answer.
Yeah, that's a great point, Richard, actually, because you mentioned banks, right? We all come from the telecom background, many of us do, right? And one of the questions we'd like to see is, from a Microsoft vulnerability perspective, we patch it every week, every 2 weeks, every month. But when was the last time we happened to patch some of our core telecom devices, for instance, because of the way we're reliant on the telecom services provided, the vendors themselves, as to how they issue their vulnerabilities and try and patch them over a period of time. And we've recently seen with 5G and move to the cloud, where vulnerabilities in the telecom networks is a massive concern. We've seen, say, for example, the SS7 vulnerabilities being exploited because they're architectural level flaws, and they allow attackers to cause a large scale espionage activities and disruption activities. So I think while vulnerabilities around ICT software is a major concern, equally talking about critical infrastructure, just like the one you mentioned across the banking, the telecom, healthcare, electricity and water, to make sure that these vulnerabilities are addressed in a timely manner is important as well.
Well, to your point, this is a known vulnerability. This is a known threat surface. And yet we tend to ignore it because the problem seems too big to solve. And, you know, that can also be related to legacy systems. You know, when you have companies merge, they don't always have the same IT environment. And then you try to cross-link them, and that helps build a threat surface that you perhaps were not otherwise aware of. These are very daunting challenges. I'm surprised you guys get to sleep at all, given all of these threats to your environment.
I believe, Richard, as well, I would like to add on this perspective. The problem is the legacy systems, or the system that we are having and there is coming out of it, or the mergers, or any of the complexity of the softwares that we have. I think the core problem is we are having a lot of softwares. We are relying on a lot of vendors that we are keeping some of the vendors out of it. For example, Microsoft, I don't think that any company wouldn't. There is definitely companies not patching, but I mean, most of the companies will definitely patch. Microsoft will definitely patch the known vendors, but what we are not aware of is the shadow IT, for example, or the softwares that basically we are not checking, or as well our softwares that basically requires as well test internal the company. So the vulnerability risk management services are very important in this perspective to basically test and check the softwares and making sure that your systems are secure, considering the complexity that we are having nowadays, because the need is becoming more and more, and the complexity of the IT people or the security system people is becoming more challenging. I think Abubakar has mentioned the risk level, assuming the risk and knowing what we need. That is a priority. So we are not able to patch everything today, but we will need to assess the risk to basically patch today what is needed to be patched, which has the highest risk, but not neglecting what is not priority today because it might be tomorrow, either as a 0-day or it might be a normal vulnerability that might lead for a breach. That's what we are facing every single day. I believe the public sector is working hard, at least in Europe and Spain, I believe as well in the Middle East. The public sector is working sometimes even much better than the banking sector in protecting the critical infrastructure. And I believe in the last 2 years, the healthcare sector as well has been working amazingly to protect the data and solving the issues of the vulnerabilities that are coming out from these softwares.
And I just add on your comment is exactly is a housing sector, public sector, transportation sector very vulnerable nowadays, especially as a Southeast Asia country, because they use legacy system, and also sometimes if the system went online, it will get easy to remote access to the legacy system with the vulnerability, security hole. So I think another thing I think is lucky, or it's lucky to have the virtualization nowadays, because now as all the panelists has mentioned regarding to a merger and acquisition, two companies may not have the same system, but you need to talk to each other, which nowadays the company will make use of the virtualization technology on cloud to bring those legacy system onto the cloud, and also try to migrate piece by piece. So at least it will give some way, even the hardware of the legacy system when end of life, it still will live for a while to give time for corporate and also for government to do the migration or transition over cloud. And of course, another idea, I think another security concern will be on cloud as well, because cloud nowadays not just control the hosting infrastructure. Now cloud, no matter what cloud it is, they are actually across the world with their own network interconnect to each other. So it's, I would say, we have internet, we have cloud network, we have A cloud network, B cloud network, C cloud network. So it become the traffic become more complicated, and it's more hard to track as well. So, but to answer your question, patch is painful. Agreed, 100%.
Wow. You packed a lot of information in a very short period of time. I'm impressed with the depth of your knowledge, but you highlighted one of the issues that has troubled me for some time now, is because we are so interconnected, we tend to accept without being aware of the other party's vulnerabilities. You know, I may be very confident that my system is secure because I've followed certain protocols, and you may feel the same way. And in fact, both of us could be right. But then we connect with a third party who may not have as much a robust system as we do, and we have no way of knowing how secure their system is. We just accept their representation that it's secure, but yet, as we know, the adversary always goes for the lowest common denominator in terms of an exploit. You know, here in the United States, there have been exploits in the past of air conditioning centers so that they can get into the corporate a database. How do we address that issue, or can we?
I believe we definitely can, and there is in the last 3-4 years there was a lot of movements in basically with regard to supply chain, with regard basically putting some kind of restrictions or some kind of guidance or some kind of requirement for this third party to connect to my network and to my system. That's the job basically of the security team within my organization, to have some kind of requirement for this company who's connecting. For example, the simple things is that they do vulnerability risk management quarterly on their systems. They have a secure communication. They do some monitoring in order for me to connect, or allowing them to connect to my network. If not, then basically I put them in a safe zone where there is no risk or harm on my company. this all as well fall under the risk that this company is bringing to me. I think that some companies do that, but some others they don't do it, which is basically as well assessing the risk of connecting this third party to my network. When we assess the risk, we are able to identify is basically this company would cause harm because, as you mentioned, the weakest or one of the weakest link to connect to any third party is to any company is through the third party. And there is software going out, not to name any of them, but there is a lot of companies that are working now in protecting the third party, or basically seeing what the third party is doing or what is the security posture of the third party, in order to basically knowing how to shape and where to shape and how to allow this company to connect to my network.
Well, your answer gives me great comfort, because from that I conclude that if you are aware of a particular problem, whether it's specific or general, you can formulate a strategy to how to protect against that problem. I was not aware until you mentioned it that many companies have established a protocol to make sure it's safe to connect to one other company or one other system, or even to a cloud service provider. So thank you for enlightening me on that.
We are seeing it in some RFPs as well nowadays, especially in, I believe, in Europe, and this is becoming more and more global, I would say, at some point. So hopefully we'll reach a time where basically the third party threat will be minimized, because it's one of the most frustrating for security specialists.
Interesting. Well, I like that approach, and I recently learned that here in the United States, the federal government is mandated. Well, the Department of Homeland Security, I believe, is mandating that all federal entities run certain tests and also patch certain systems immediately. It's in the form of a federal dictate, rather than, okay, Department of Commerce, you can manage your system. Department of Interior, you can manage your system. Here in the United States, it seems that the government is taking a more active role in helping to make sure that the various government agencies protect their systems better. It sounds like there's a similar movement in Europe, but it's done by the private sector as opposed to the government. Is that an accurate understanding?
I would say yes. I would say we have some guidance, but we don't have much involvement when it comes to system patching or any of the infrastructure. There is some guidance coming from the EU, and it's shared across threats or infrastructure or the patching. But being very active, I believe it's part of the private sector initiatives. It's not coming from the public sector initiative, like in the United States.
All right. How does that experience compare with our other friends in various Asian countries that are on the call tonight? Singapore,
Vietnam, most of them are coming
example.
from, actually, I would say, who come from the corporate sector, especially on the banking industry. Because with the banking industry, like in Hong Kong, there is an authority that will give guidance to all the banks that they have to follow and comply with the rule and regulation regarding to the data security. Just to let you know that actually even in mainland China, they have launched the data security, new latest security law and personal information law at September and also November. So everything guidance is out, but when we talk about which industry apply the most will be the banking industry, because they have to follow certain regulation and comply with all the security suggestion from the government.
Well, and that's a very fascinating and interesting approach, I think, because it's a private sector is the one that's going to recognize the hurt the soonest. Because it'll have an adverse effect on their bottom line, and that usually gets corporate leadership's attention. we're losing money. So therefore, we have to spend a little more money on security. So that's a worthwhile endeavor. And I can understand that, particularly being the case in Hong Kong, which is a banking center, and also important more so in Singapore because of their data center industry, for example. And then the emergence of all of that in Vietnam, for example. So very profound statements, gentlemen. We're getting close to the end. I don't want it to end, but I want to give everyone an opportunity to raise an issue that has not been discussed yet tonight or this morning, depending on what part of the world you're in. Observations, comments, conclusions?
I would take the opportunity to say, I think we are tackling the threat from different perspectives. When we talk about softwares is very important as well. The infrastructure is very important. I believe the 5G is becoming as well nowadays the hot topic. The IoT devices are becoming as well hot topic. My conclusion is that there is a lot of frameworks coming on and coming out from either EU or the US government or the NIST or any of these frameworks in order to protect or making our devices more and more or safer, basically. In this perspective, I would like to say that us as a human, we always have the right or the biggest part because we tend to assess and we tend to not to follow sometimes the guidelines. For example, in the 5G, in order to have some kind of business to increase our profit in the 5G or in the business of the 5G, we tend to reduce some kind of measures or some kind of baseline. So it's very recommended for everyone who's joining us, basically to follow the guidelines that are given by different countries, by different organizations, in order to secure as much as possible our systems. At the end, there is a lot of people using us as ISPs. I know that we have a lot of challenge in the telco environment to invest every single time from 3G to 4G, from 4G to 5G. It's a huge investment on the telco side, but keeping our customers protected is the aim and the target. I think that's Telefonica. What Telefonica believes in is connecting people the best way possible. And I believe our infrastructure is based on security, and safety is one of the most important topics that we work on. And I hope we can keep that within the all globally and protect the data from ISP side globally, because we are critical for everyone to connect.
Oh, indeed. And I like your comment about the fact that 5G is a relatively new industry, for example, and yet we are trying to address those vulnerabilities and problems now rather than waiting for them to become larger and more mature. So I like that approach that you're recommending, that we take early action and be proactive early on. Any other observations from our brilliant panel tonight?
Just add on to your comment regarding the 5G network. I would say 5G network is a fast, secure network, and I totally agree that if all the country will follow at least some basic guideline, later on the world can be interconnected. With 5G, what can it be done with the IoT? I believe Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook CEO, have just has the initiative regarding the meta universe, which this meta universe is all connected regarding to the IoT device that you move, you think, and collect it to the data. So what is another concern is if everyone fall into that meta universe, have your virtual identity in the virtual world, it creates not just the real world security threat as well, and also we have to concern about the virtual security identity threat in that virtual world. So this is another big topic, and why it can be achieved because of the IoT device and also the 5G network. Maybe later on, everyone wear glasses walking around. It's just like that movie by Steven Spielberg. I forgot the name of it. I forgot the name of it just a few years ago. That something 11 or something, yeah, by Steven Spielberg. So that you wear glasses, wear goggles, and you become a virtual identity, and you earn virtual bucks, and you do things, interact with people virtually with icon. Yeah, this is another way that we have to, yeah. Thank you very much, Ready Player One. Thank you, Ready Player One.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. Thank you very much. Well, we only have a few more minutes left, and I know there's some points that need to be made. So please speak up. Let's make sure we've covered everything.
Right. Thank you. I think I'll just very quickly pick up on where Bechara left. It's basically about realizing that we as telecom operators are responsible to connect people and connect entities, and we have to ensure that they stay connected and do everything what we can in order to secure our networks so that this connectivity, uninterrupted connectivity, is made available to people. And just the other point about the fact that 4G several years ago changed our society and our connected environment in more ways than we could have initially imagined. I think 5G is going to do that, but order of magnitude times more. And the implications of that in terms of how we're going to connect, interact, and communicate are going to be profound. And while 2G, 3G networks were inherently not designed to be secure, I think it's extremely important to learn of those mistakes and to ensure that the 5G networks that we're implementing and adopting and rolling out across the countries is designed to be secure, and is secure by design so that it reduces much less threats that are aimed towards these networks. And secure connectivity eventually is going to be foundational to how we move forward as a digital economy all over the world.
Yes, and that's going to become particularly important as the world economy starts to recover from the adverse impacts that we've had with what I call the COVID cocoon and the disruption in supply chain for all activities. With the economy starting to become more robust, hopefully sooner rather than later, there's the need for more and more connectivity. So you're exactly right. We need to think about the problems that we have incurred in the past and not let those problems continue. We need to address them full on up front before they become massive. Very valid points. All right, other observations, please, because I know we haven't covered everything.
So I think with the pandemic as well, and the fact that today so many telcos and CSP representatives are here, telcos are right smack in the middle of the industrial 4.0 revolution, especially with 5G. Telco is in never a better position to be able to upscale their offering, from a traditional layer 2, layer 3 services. This is the best time for telcos, and a lot of telcos are doing it right now. Okay, like what Telefonica or Bechara is saying, where telcos will play a very key and important role in offering managed security services to their customers. And I think we also talked about cost. So I think we have to be very rational. The telcos and CSPs have to be very rational about how to spread out this cost. Does a telco, in their pursuit of offering this variety of security services, do they have to do it themselves? Okay, is this something that they have to roll up their sleeve and get into the thick and thin of everything and then do it themselves? Well, from a provider perspective, I think there are going to be companies out there that exist for the pure purpose of helping telcos along the way. And that's what these companies are there for. So I think it's a matter of actually putting the resources in the right place, to putting a trust into the right partner to help you build that business together so that you can ride this revolution wave in a positive and ultimately a profitable way.
I totally agree with you. I'd like to thank all of you for being so open with the discussion points tonight. You really remind me of first responders, but first responders in the IT world, to try to identify and correct a problem before it becomes massive. That is truly impressive. That's absolutely amazing. So thank all of you for participating tonight and sharing with us your observations, and more importantly, sharing with us solutions. That's what we need in this business, solutions. So thank you very much. I appreciate every one of you, and I look forward to meeting you again in Singapore next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for that, Richard.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for everyone taking part. Thank you, Richard, for moderating today. Just like to take the chance to thank our panelists as well for participating. And finally, to also thank our sponsors today, Nexusguard. You can find out more about Nexusguard on the exhibitor page, where it has all our sponsors and exhibitors. Do stay tuned. We do have more content coming up now, but for now, thank you to everyone taking part today.
Excellent.